of the coat of many colors. And a real quick synopsis of Joseph. Joseph and Jesus are one and the same, which is the sun, which is the solar within you. They are both betrayed by his brothers, by his disciples, for 20 pieces of silver, for 30 pieces of silver, thrown into the pit, resurrects to be second in command in Egypt, resurrects to be second in command in Israel, or in God's eyes. And then they both come to a very important point of you and I understanding that this represents an energy within us. It has nothing to do with real people. If it has to do with real people, we're lost because there's nothing that we can do to equate to them. But there's something much more than that. It has to do with an energy within you, and all of these people and all of their names and all of the brothers and all of the places are talking about various parts within you. Something within you. And when we concluded the last part of the story, Joseph, who was unknown to his brothers, Joseph was betrayed by his brothers, rose to second in command in Egypt. Okay? His brothers came looking for food. They were destitute. That represents the 12 signs of the zodiac, the 12 aspects within you. They never recognized that it was Joseph. And Joseph says, before I can set you free, before I can give you this food, you have to bring the child. They didn't bring Benjamin. Benjamin is the youngest. Benjamin means son of my right hand. And what we realize this is talking about is that you and I, if we want to be free, if we want to see God, if we want to experience life, if we want to experience nature, we must bring the child of the right side. And we bring that by activating that which is the right hemisphere. And we activate the right hemisphere through our meditation. And I'll say, sometimes it's difficult for you. You sit there and say, well, how the heck am I going to bring the right hemisphere? I don't know what am I going to do? Do I go like that? Do I stand on my, how do I activate the right hemisphere? Sometimes in your own life it's difficult for you to see it. But look at the world that you live in. Look at the brutal aspect of this world. Years and years of people with guns and bombs and starving all over the world. And realize how short has society, this earth should be a place where you live in joy and peace. And what is the child? When you're worrying about whether you're going to be able to have enough money to pay the taxes or pay the rent or buy food, the kid's sitting on the floor playing with blocks. That's not his concern. When you're worrying about your problems of work, or you're worried about your problems with the family, or you're worried about what somebody in your family said, or you're worried about what the doctor's going to say, the kid's on the floor playing with his Sago set or whatever. It's not that child's concern. We have destroyed ourselves with these concerns. We have destroyed ourselves with the stress that has been created by the societies and the religions of the world. You have an organization in this country right now. It's just a political organization. Very little bit we can get involved in politics, and I don't wish to, just to separate. But you have a thing called the Christian Coalition, and they have aligned themselves with people who would take from that which is the needy, take from that which is the old, take from that which, and give to that which is the corporate, give to that which, and they align themselves with people who say that assault weapons are necessary in this country. And this is the Christian Coalition. What does Jesus have to do with that? Jesus would say, take every dime you got and give it to the poor. And they say, take every dime of the poor and give it to the rich. And Jesus says, turn the other cheek, and they say you need assault weapons, and they're the Christian Coalition. How far have we missed in understanding what life is about? How far have we missed? And so what do? The only thing that you can do with this world, with these governments, with these religious institutions, is do as the Bible says, come out from among them, be separate, do not touch the unclean thing. Because it is absolute madness, and they are on a collision course of total destruction. And so here you get to the point where Joseph says to the brothers, if you want to be free, if you want to be fed, bring the child. He's saying it to you. It has nothing to do with Joseph. It has nothing to do with Benjamin. It's a thought to you. Do you want to be free? Do you want this burden off of your back? Do you want this burden off of your life? Do you want this burden off of you physically? Bring the child. And you bring the child by energizing that which is within you, that electrical energy which stimulates the right side. In the storyline, all the brothers run back to Jacob, who's the father, and they say, Chicago, what is this? Been on for a couple of days, eh? He wants the child, and Jacob says no. And that's where we left it. And there's a reluctance on our part. Even when you start talking, isn't it something? How many of us have still not reached that point of totally separating? Even if you start talking about Republicans or conservatives or Democrats or liberals, even inside of here, even there's some of us that I support this group. Once you can say you support either of them, you're nowhere near being where you've got to be with this. You got to get totally detached from them. There's a reluctance to let go. There's a need to have an opinion. There's a reason to say, oh yeah, we got to do this, we got to do that, we got to do the other thing. In Genesis chapter 42 on page 38 is where we're at. And if you look at Genesis chapter 42 and in verse 38, we get to that point where Jacob says, my son shall not go with you. In other words, I'm not going to give up this part of me. I'm an American, I'm going to be patriotic, I'm a Christian, I'm going to do this. I am this, I am that, I am the other thing. And all of these things are part of the pride which separates us and causes all of this friction and chaos. And even when the world is going down in a ball of flames, we're still standing there raising our flag and saying, look how wonderful we are. We never seem to get it until it's too late. And so the mind, which is Jacob, rejects the idea of sending Benjamin, giving up all of that, totally rejected. Now look at Genesis chapter 43. And the famine was sore in the land. In other words, people are starving. And there's nothing to eat. It's not talking about food. It's talking about understanding. Do you have any idea what your life is for? Do you have any idea what the purpose that you exist is for? Do you look back at all of the years you've been alive and say, what the heck have I accomplished? But more than that, what is going to happen to me? What is going to happen to my family? What is going to happen to my children? What is going to happen to the earth? What's the purpose of all of this? There's nothing to eat, meaning I have no idea. I have to somehow find a purpose, a reason. And if you look in what they call this New Age movement all over the world, even, one of the things Joan and I were saying, you go to Epcot, it's a very commercial place. It's a very, Disney and all of this stuff place. But you know what the whole theme of it is? The circle of life. Trying to get back to finding out what in the world did we do wrong. And one of the most beautiful parts, they have this Lion King character, and he narrates this thing, and he shows how people have bred like rabbits with no sense of what sex is and what their purpose is. And then they got so many people that they had to build these buildings, and then they didn't have enough and pollution and smoke and all of that, and destroyed the world because we didn't have enough common sense. And you have religious people say, every time you have sex, you got to have a baby. That's what they do. Nobody ever said, why? There's a creator that created a union between male and female to be an ecstasy, to be a joy, to be used in a beautiful way, not just to have babies. You don't have to have babies all over the place because you don't have the wherewithal in order to take care of them. And you breed just like some animals, and they're all over the place. And so we get then to this point, like it says there, come back to the circle of life and begin to understand that everything has to replenish itself and everything has to be used in a beautiful way. But when you have the rules and regulations made that say if you think this, it's dirty. And yet the guy that's telling you that if you think this is dirty is thinking it. Because everybody thinks it. Everybody feels it. It is the energy. It's the circle. It is life itself. And we have allowed these buffoons in frocks and stained glass to tell us it's dirty. It says in the Bible, God created it and he said, it's good. And if you didn't make it dirty and hide it and make it destructive and scare people, it could be used in a way that is proper and wonderful and creative and with dignity, and not made into the thing that it is, where people are running around hiding it, and you got abortions and all this kind of stuff, because we're never able to sit down and talk about it. Oh, sure, God, you shouldn't have an abortion. No, you shouldn't. But where were they with the kids in the garbage cans? What do they say? There's no answers to it. Just have babies when you have sex. And that's what they're doing. And so we don't understand. There's a famine. And that's what it says in Genesis 43. The famine was sore in the land. The people don't understand. And you know what? You take religious organizations, Christian coalitions, whatever. The only place that I know in the world where religious people who are in politics or are in charge are Iraq and Iran. It is not exactly the kind of culture that you want to live in. I don't know of anything more dangerous in the world than to give a religious person a gun. The last one that we saw was David Koresh and the rest of these people. Because you know what? There is no such thing as a Christian political thing. You know what? If you are a Christian, which means you are a Christ, which means you have an energy within you, you don't need politicians. You don't need guns. There is a power of nature, which is a love power. There is a Christ within you who directs your path. And don't tell me it's wrong, because the politicians of this world have done nothing but destroy it and the people who live in it. Nothing. And the ones who have destroyed it have done such evil. You have hired new ones to undo the evil that the first ones did, and they compounded it. And we're still doing it. So there's a grave famine. And look at in Genesis 43:1, it came to pass when they had eaten up the corn. In other words, this is what we've done. We've devoured all of the religious stuff. We've eaten up all of the religious stuff. We've taken it all in, and we're sitting here, we have nothing. We're dying. We live off the impulses, but there's a surge, and something within you speaks. And now look in Genesis 43:3. Look who speaks. Judah spoke. Judah spoke. Now it's important for you to turn, if you would, to I didn't write the page. Will somebody tell me what page Numbers chapter 2 is on? The book of Numbers chapter 2 in those little Bibles. I didn't write, because I want to identify with you who Judah is. Numbers chapter 2. Where's everybody? Page 115. Okay. Look on page 115, and if you'll notice, they're positioning the 12 tribes of Israel, and they're positioned astrologically, but they're positioned on the desert. And if you will look here, in the center is the tabernacle. On verse 3, Numbers chapter 2, verse 3, on the east side, towards the rising of the sun, is the camp of Judah. The camp of Judah is the origin of the word Jew. It is one who camps at the east or the right side at the point of the rising sun. You become a Jew when you camp inwardly at the right side, at the right hemisphere, at the point of the rising sun, or at the point of enlightenment, at the point of energy. And this is what speaks. Judah speaks. So go back to Genesis where we were, Genesis chapter 43. On page 38. And here Judah speaks, and this is a beautiful part, and I'd like you to follow this very closely and very carefully with me. Genesis chapter 43, verse 3. Judah spoke. Now the Spirit is speaking within you. The Spirit is speaking within you, and the Spirit says, the man said, you shall not see my face except your brother be with you. The Spirit within you is saying, you will not see the face of God unless you bring that impulse, which is the brother, which is Benjamin, which is the child of the right hand. Doesn't make any difference what church you go to. Doesn't make any difference what kind of prayers you say. It doesn't make any difference how religious you are. It doesn't make any difference whether they call you a Jew, a Christian, a Muslim. You will not see the face of God unless you bring the son of the right hand, unless you bring the child, unless you bring that energy, which is the right hemisphere of the brain. You won't. You won't. And the Spirit has told you. Judah, the Jew, has spoken and said, this is what he said. There was another Jew who came along Who was this? Joseph, in a different name. And on page 795, he said something. Page 795, Matthew chapter 18. Matthew chapter 18. And in Matthew chapter 18, verse 3, this other Jew, if you would, from the tribe of Judah, and Matthew 18, verse 3 says to you, except you be converted and become as little children, you shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven. Unless you bring the child within you. There's a part of you that doesn't care about the Republicans, doesn't care about the Democrats, doesn't care about religion, doesn't care about all the rules and regulations and the structures of the society, is not patriotic. There is a part of you that wants to play. There is a part of you that wants to sing. There is a part of you that wants to dance. It is the child. Forget your religion. Forget all of the instructions. Forget all of this stuff that you think is so important, and let the child, picture yourself as a child playing on the floor in your living room while your mother and father were yelling and screaming at each other about how rotten everything was. And that's the child within you that's got to come, because you got to pick up in your arms that child in your meditation and bring that child to the Lord. Bring that child within you. Except you come as a child, and a child comes within, not having any opinions, not having any religious instructions, not having any meditational ideas. A child comes with its thumb in its mouth. What do you think? Unless you come as a child. Unless you bring Joseph. Look what it says in Genesis 43, where we were on page 38. You shall not see my face except you bring the child. You see that? Genesis chapter 43, verse 3. You shall not see my face. Keep your finger there. I want you to go back a few pages to Genesis 32. You're on 40? Find Genesis 32. See how many of you can find Genesis 32. And I want to show you something. Can you find it? Genesis chapter 32. Okay. I want you to see the fact that Jacob saw God's face. What did Judah just say? That Joseph said, you shall not see my face unless you bring the child. That's the face of God. And in Genesis chapter 32, verse 30, Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face. It's within you. It's electric. It's electric. Do you ever say that? It's electric. You know what the new song they're singing here with OJ? You know that song that you sing when you go to weddings? YMCA. You know that? You know the new song that OJ singing? YDNA. You know why that was necessary? To bring you. All of a sudden, each one of you had run up on a rock somewhere. And I can always tell when you've run up on a rock. You're staring at me. And something has crossed into your mind that has nothing to do with this. And I know. I will call the place Peniel, of the pineal gland of the brain. Now, look at Genesis chapter 43, verse 4. And Judah speaks again. The Spirit says, if you, will not send him, he says, you shall not see, Genesis 4. If you will send our brother with us, we will go down and buy the food. So Judah is saying, I'll take the child. The Spirit within you has one purpose, to take the child to the right hemisphere. That's the only purpose. But look what it says there in verse 4. If you will send our brother, we will go and buy food. What do you mean you have to buy the food? You have to buy. Let me show you how much you have to pay. This is you. Okay? This is the right side. This is the left side. This is the side you use for all of your bright ideas. It's 10% of you. In order to get over here, it's going to cost you that 10%. You got to pay 10%, Rudy. You got to give it up. And if you pay that 10%, you know what? You'll stop with the chaos. All of a sudden, you'll start to understand things. You'll start to see things. You start to realize things. You'll start to have enlightenment. You'll start to have food. In Genesis chapter 43, where we are, verse 6, it says Israel said, Jacob is referred to as Israel because the spirit and the mind are coming together. As you know, Israel is 3 Egyptian gods. It has nothing to do with the Jewish state. It's Isis, who is the spirit. It's Ra, who is the mind. And it is from the Mithra bull cult El, which is the power within. That's why all of the power within is described as El, angel. And all the angels' names are named Michael, Uriel, Gabriel, Raphael, Ariel, and all this kind of stuff. Israel is 3 Egyptian. Do you know what? Do you know what we're going to find out? Do you know what we're going to find out in a few weeks? Going to shock your little boots off. You want to hear something? Do you know that 2 of the 12 tribes of Israel came from Egypt? And had nothing to do whatsoever with Israel? There's nothing to do with it. We're talking about something that's important. We're talking about something that is within us. See? So Jacob is referred to as Israel, and there is this reluctance to give up. But it is starting to crack because of the hunger. And now the spirit Judah makes a commitment. The spirit within you, the Jew, that which camps at the right side, makes a commitment. Genesis chapter 43:8. And Judah said to Israel, send a lad with me, and we will arise and go. Send the lad with me, and we will arise and go that we may live and not die. Both you, will you read that with me? Do you understand what's going to happen to you? Forget about all of this stuff in the Bible. I'm talking about your life, your kids, your family, your job, your car, your health. All of these things that are important right now in this life that you live. Look what it says, okay? It says, look, send the lad with me. We will arise and go that we may live and not die. Both we and you and our little ones. That's the promise. Or, you saw it. You saw when they blew up the building. And you saw the militias that are all over the country. They're going to save you. Can you imagine? I don't know about you, but I'm going to trust the FBI and the police and the ATF. I really don't want militias saving me. Especially when the chief of the militia's got a Bible in his hand. Because I know the first one that's going to get shot is me. I'll take the FBI. I'm a lot more comfortable. Thank you very much. So we're going to arise and go to Joseph. Okay? But who is Joseph? I got struck a nerve over here in the corner. Look at Genesis chapter 42. Come with me and see who Joseph is. The man who is the Lord of the land is Joseph. And the land, the word in metaphysics, land, earth, means your mind, your brain. The Lord of your mind, the Lord of your brain is Joseph. It is the Christ. It is God. And you must arise and go to the man. But the man, if you try to arise and go to the man and don't bring the child, how do you arise and go to the man and not bring the child? I'm going to meditate for a new car. I'm going to meditate so my pimples go away. I'm going to meditate so she'll say yes. Or sometimes I'm going to meditate so he'll say yes. I'm going to do all of these things. Or I'm going to bust through and activate the Kundalini. I'll put these New Age glasses on and hook up my New Age receiver to my ears and turn it up certain and I'll fly to Nirvana. So the Spirit would take the wounded inner child to the Lord, and there will be salvation. In Genesis chapter 43:9, look at the promise that the Spirit gives you. I will be a surety for him. If I don't bring him back to you and set him before you, let me bear the blame forever. In other words, the Spirit is telling you, please, please, Carol, Albert, Joan, Lorraine, Bill, Rudy, Sutton, Rita, Carol Manu with an O.
Gloria.
I screwed it up again. Gloria. The Spirit is saying, please trust me. Don't trust politicians. Don't trust people on the radio or on television. Don't trust people in newspapers. Don't trust preachers. Trust me inside of you. I will take that child of yours and I will take it to the Lord of the land, that is the God, the Christ, who controls your mind. And there will be a change in you. In Genesis chapter 43:11, that part of us which is held by, oh, so I don't really care. If you come here on Tuesday night or a Thursday night and say, oh, I don't get anything out of it. Don't cares whether you get anything out of it. You don't care. It's not important whether you get anything out of it. The child is being brought within you to the God. Because that's what Jesus says. That's what Buddha said. That's what Krishna said. That's what this story says. The child will be taken. Trust him. Come. Genesis 43:11. And their father Israel said, if it must be, take the child. And take everything. And take money and take honey and take all of this stuff. In other words, we're going to commit everything we got. There's an indication of mistrust here, which is conveyed by these words. The fact is, we're not really too sure about this. And there's a lot of you sitting in here right now who are not too sure about this. You don't really know. You don't. You do know one thing. You've been to all the religious places, the churches, and you know that doesn't work. So you're going to give this a shot. So you really don't, but you got to try it. And you got to discipline yourself. So there's a reluctance here. We're hungry, but other things. If you're Genesis 43:12, it says here, Jacob says, look, take double money in your hand and carry it, because the money that you brought back in your sack, it might have been an oversight. See, there's an expression that, things might be better, but it might not have been the meditation. Maybe it was an oversight. But I'll tell you something. When you came and things got better, it was the meditation. And when you didn't come and things got worse, it was because of the lack of meditation. It had nothing to do with me, had nothing to do with this church, it has to do with you and the commitment within you. When you went and took the child within you, things got better. When you stopped, things got worse. It's not an accident, it's not a coincidence, it's fact. And it doesn't require you to come here. Let's be honest about it. Be home, be wherever you are. The requirement is to take the child within yourself to the Lord of the land. And then Genesis 43:13 comes the commitment that we've been waiting for. Take your brother and go unto the man. So off we go. Hopefully now you understand what is required of you. Take everything. Forsake all of your pride and all of your opinions. Give it all up. Forget about it. You're not part of anything. You're not part of America. You're not part of this. You're not part of the Christians. You're not part of the Jews. You are part of the universe. You hold your hand out to every little living thing of the universe, and you fly off into the sun with the universe, and you said, I am God. And you sing the new song, God bless the universe, land that I love. Can you do that? That's tough. That's what you got to do. Because the first thing that people knew I was a radical? The first thing that I said that people freaked out about, I said, God is not an American. That's right. What? He's a Baptist. What are you talking about? So the brothers come. The brothers they've got Benjamin. The brothers of the 12. The aspects of, they've got Benjamin, and they take Benjamin. They're taking the child back to Joseph. And in Genesis 43, verses 19 to 22, there's an explanation that, look, we're really honest, man. We don't know how this money got in our sack. There's the part of this problem that we all have spiritually. We're always trying to explain our meditational experiences logically. We never can understand. But in Genesis 43:23, look what it says. The steward replies, and he says, fear not, God has provided for you. Your God, the God of your father, has given you treasure. And then they brought Simeon out, which was the story we did before. In other words, it was your meditation that caused things to improve. Now we get to Genesis 43:24. And in Genesis 43:24, the man brought the men into Joseph's house. They're bringing the child. You're bringing the child. And this is, please stay with me just a few more minutes. This is so beautiful and so important. You have reached that right hemisphere in your meditation. You've brought the child into that holy temple of the right side. And look what happens. First of all, Genesis 43:24. And gave them water. They washed their feet. Okay? Foot washing is done by a lot of religions that has nothing to do with your feet. Okay? Look down at where your feet are. One of your feet, I hope, is touching the ground. Good chance both of them are. Okay? Your feet touch the earth or the ground. If maybe you haven't understood anything I've said up to now, that one should get through. Okay? Your feet do touch the ground. The ground metaphysically means your mind. The part of you that touches the ground is symbolically portrayed as the part of you that touches your mind. And your mind is the source of all of your problems. You have one enemy in this world, your thoughts. Okay? Washing your feet means cleansing away the part of you that has touched the mind. Washing away all of the thoughts, washing away all of the fear, washing away all of the guilt, washing away all of the hate, washing away all of the hurt, washing away all of that inferior feeling, washing away all of that which is put into your mind every day. So when you get in the bathtub next time, it's not your feet you're washing, it's your head. Look, let me show you this quickly so that you get to understand this. Go to page 879 and John chapter 13. Page 879, John chapter 13. And in John chapter 13, Jesus is washing the disciples' feet. And Peter looks at him in verse 6. You see this? Then he comes to Peter and Peter says, "What are you doing this for? What the heck are you doing? What are you? You're supposed to be God. What is this foot washing stuff?" And look what Jesus says to him. "What I'm doing you don't know now, but you shall know it later." You don't understand what I'm doing. In other words, foot washing is a symbol of spiritual mind cleansing. And you that are sitting in this room may not understand this now, but someday you will. Someday you will. When finally that mind of yours, which has driven you berserk and has made you violent and has made you mad and has made you stressful and has made you depressed and has made you sick, when finally the thoughts that have done that are washed away and you're not fearful anymore and you know where to go to be restored, finally you'll understand what washing feet means. And then maybe someday you'll be able to explain it to somebody else. But now the meditation deepens. We come to the point of the meeting of the Lord, and I'd like you to look at this and feel this. Forget about this as Joseph. Forget about this as Benjamin. Think of it as you, your life, Carol, your life, Rudy, your life, Gloria, your life, Dot, your life, your life. Think of this as your life. This is beautiful. Genesis 43:29. Joseph, this is God, this is Jesus, looking, waiting for you all of this time that he's been betrayed by your thoughts and your fears and your guilt and all of the things. And it says he lifted his eyes and he saw Benjamin. That's what God has been waiting for from you all of your life, that he could lift his eyes within you and see your child, the you that he sent here, that has been brutalized by all of this guilt and fear. This is the culmination of your meditation. The child within is touched by the Lord. And how happy is God for you that you finally found it? How happy is God that you finally understand of the kingdom within and the teachings of Jesus and the teachings of Buddha and Krishna? How happy how overwhelmed is God that you have finally overcome the church and the governments and all of these politicians and religions and brought the child. How happy, how happy, how happy. Genesis 43:30 says, "And Joseph made haste, for his bowels did yearn upon his brother, and he sought where to weep, and he entered into his chamber, and there he wept. God is overjoyed and crying with literal universal tears of joy because you have brought the child back to him in the holy chamber of the right side. That's how important and how wonderful this is. That's what the key to the purpose of life. That's the key to the reason you're alive. That's the key to the reason for all of the chaos, because no one, so few, understands that there is a God who dwells at the right side in the temple waiting for you to bring the child. And when you bring that child and he lifts his eyes to look upon the child, he weeps with tears of absolute joy. Now, there's an interesting thing, and we'll wrap this up. Genesis 43, verse 32. They set on him by himself, and for them by themselves, and for the Egyptians, and it's about time to sit down and eat. Look at what it says. I want to show you something that's so interesting here. And I told you a little while ago about two of the tribes of Israel were not Jews, they were Egyptians. For the Egyptians which the... Look what it says in the middle of this, verse 32, because the Egyptians might not eat bread with the Hebrews. It was an abomination. They couldn't touch one another. Friends, there's one side of you which is equally as important as the other side, but they never touch. They can't. Okay? But you know what's so important? It says they set on for him, that's Joseph by himself, and for them by themselves, and for the Egyptians which did eat with him. Joseph, who saved the 12 tribes of Israel. Joseph, who saved Israel from extinction. Joseph, who was a Jew, gave it up and became an Egyptian. And he sat with the Egyptians. So much for your Christian Judeo heritage. Is that amazing? Without Joseph, there would be. And yet when it was time to declare himself, he declared himself as an Egyptian. And then he sent food over to the brothers, and over on the right side was Benjamin, the child. And look as we conclude this in verse 34. And he took and sent messes, that's food, unto them, but Benjamin's was 5 times as much as any of theirs. Benjamin received that which was the total fulfillment. The 5 is sight, taste, touch, smell, hearing. It's the 5 senses. In other words, the complete person. When you sacrifice, you must take the 5 wounds. That's when Jesus was crucified, feet, hands, side, 5 wounds, okay? Means the 5 senses must be killed. When David went to slay the Goliath, he picked up 5 smooth stones. You must take control of the 5 senses. And here, there is 5 times more spiritual food given to the child than to the rest of your physical being, because it is a complete fulfillment of the 5 senses. The 5 elements, the total involvement. God has given this. But the most beautiful thing to me is the oneness here, that without this cannot exist. Without that which we think are the pagans, or that which we think are the ungodly, we'd have nothing to understand, nothing to be. And so there is a universal oneness. Remember Benjamin. And we go on with this. And next week is the most fascinating story in this whole thing, I think, in the whole Bible. And it's the beautiful story of the silver cup. And each one of you is given that silver cup for a purpose. And it is within you to use. And it is given in such a way. We'll see it next week. And we'll continue the story of Joseph and the coat. But we've reached a point in our story, and I hope you've reached a point in your life where you understand the child. You understand must go on. And you understand that it simply requires you to come within yourself, to start paying attention to that which is within yourself. Start paying attention to yourself. Separate from all of these people. Get away from this stuff on television and radio and get away from all of this negativity. Believe me, it's killing people. It is destroying people. It is self-destroying. It doesn't make any difference to the president or you like the president. There is so much anger and self-destructive natures running loose now that they are just jumping on one another and committing suicide. Stay away from them. Turn then away from all of that which is the governments and turn within yourself. And Joseph is there. Jesus is there. The Buddha, the Krishna. God is there who will weep with joy. And you will be set on high and fed, and you will be given 5 times in excess. You will be fulfilled as a person beyond what these people know. And they will be shooting at one another. And you'll be set apart from it and lifted above it. Trust him. Trust the one who sits at the right side, the Jew, the Spirit who says, trust me. Let me take you up to meet the man, the Lord of the land. You have a choice. You know what they are. And now the beautiful story that you don't have to set one foot or spend one dime to find that which is the ultimate universal God of nature who dwells within you. Personal, private, powerful, universal within yourself. You don't have to study anything. You don't have to go anywhere. He'll come, sit within the dark side of the road inside of yourself, and he'll come and she'll come and they'll find you. That's the great part. Okay, thank you very much for sharing this time with Joseph and Benjamin.